What we're going to discuss today is about civil engineer rates, salary, and employment expectations. Civil engineers salary or compensation. So locally, a civil engineer receives a monthly salary ranging from 17,000 to 25,000 depending on the type of employer. So it means this is a rate in the Philippines. But in the US, a civil engineer receives a monthly salary of $4,300 to $6,400, again, depending on the type of employer. In other countries, pay and benefits are definitely higher than local rates. That is why, obviously, most of the civil engineers who aspire to have a higher income will really decide to work abroad. For the basic educational requirement for a civil engineer to officially and legally be employed according to the profession of civil engineer, two things are needed, and these are the diploma in civil engineering and the license from the Professional Regulation Commission or PRC. For the cost of education in a public university, a course in civil engineering costs approximately 3,500 pesos per semester only, or a total of 35,000 pesos for the entire 5 course of civil engineering. However, if to compare it with a private institution, it may have a total cost of ranging from 310,000 to 515,000 pesos. So just like in Siliman, it belongs to a private institution. That is why obviously your tuition fees is higher compared than this 35,000 pesos for the entire 5-year course. For the employment opportunities, locally, the demand for civil engineers depends on the current state of the construction industry. Construction industry will boom. Once a construction industry booms, then the demand for civil engineers and other skilled construction workers will become higher as well. Then in the government section, government spending on infrastructures will likewise push the demand for this type of workers. So if in a certain municipality or province, if the government has some projects just like road construction or a new construction of any structures related to the development of the locality, just like new school, public school, or renovation of the municipal hall or new offices, then it may require more civil engineers and other skilled workers for that certain project. While overseas, the demand for engineers and other construction workers of various skills will continue, mostly in the Middle East, Korea, the Caribbean islands, Malaysia, Ireland, and Canada. On the other hand, civil engineers can also work into other industries, and these are mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas and water supply, construction, and real estate, renting, and business activities. So it means that once you have a profession in civil engineer, you will have a broad range of opportunities where you can choose to work to or apply a job. For the prospects for career and advancement, a civil engineer may advance into supervisory positions, taking complete charge of a construction project as project engineer. So, this involves bigger responsibilities, which consist of directing construction, operations, and maintenance activities at project site. Another area to further advance his or her career is to engage in consultancy services, wherein he or she provides technical advice regarding design, construction, or program modification and structural repairs to industrial and managerial personnel. Also, he or she may render services in the conduct of scientific studies to identify engineering problems and assess the potential impact of projects. For the nature of work, a civil engineer performs engineering duties in planning, designing, and overseeing construction and maintenance of building structures and facilities such as roads, railroads, airports, bridges, harbors, dams, irrigation projects, pipeline, water and sewage system, power plants, waste disposal units, and other civil engineering structures. Um, the common tasks for a civil engineer are first, advices on the design structures such as bridges, dams, docks, roads, airports, railways, canals, pipelines, waste disposal and flood control systems, and industrial and other large buildings. Next is instructs, directs, and supervises underground construction such as tunnels, basements, foundations, and also scope protection, infrastructures, water containment, and distribution systems. Then lastly, establishes control systems to ensure efficient functioning of structures as well as safety and environmental protection. So for the skills and competencies, a civil engineer should have the aptitude for mathematics. Of course, this is the very basic, where in fact you don't have to expect that a student can graduate in civil engineering if he doesn't like it or he doesn't have the brain to succeed in mathematics. Then the ability to analyze, compare, and interpret facts and figures quickly. So your logic is really needed. Then excellent communication skills, both verbally and in writing. Communication skills is really important in even in other professions to avoid future mistakes for certain tasks. Then, practical knowledge of computers, basic accounting software packages, and their applications in accounting and internal auditing. So, example for this is that you must at least know how to do Excel spreadsheets. And then basic knowledge of computers, of course, you have to know it as well because especially right now that we are mostly dealing with a high technological tasks and no longer follow uh, as what the old practice of civil engineering repairing. We just keep on writing by hand. However, as a student right now, part of my requirement is for you to take notes and do your activity through handwriting. It's because since we are doing an online class, and if I will allow you to copy your notes just to like by simply downloading and or copy pasting, then you cannot feel that you are really um, into a class. It's because I assume that some of you will just, once you see a video discussion, then you'll just view it quickly and don't bother to check on the further discussion or the later discussion. So for you to feel at least that you are having a class despite of this um, online class brought by the pandemic, then make sure that you have at least a notebook beside you. And then strong interpersonal skills. So this applies especially if you will be handling people at work or the employees or the laborers that will be under your project. So you have to be more open and relate to the um, employees that you are supervising, so that for whatever issues and problems that may come in a project or tasks, then it can be resolved immediately. Investigates existing structures, retrofit, and strengthen the same. So this will apply if you are offering services to like to for renovation or reconstruction or retrofittation. So if you are already an expert in that field of civil engineering, then um, many old structures or old building owners will come into your grab into your services because of progress and development. Old structures will really need to be retrofitted or renovated, and then to utilize it for like larger purpose or more strength of the structure. Then organizes and directs maintenance and repair of existing structures. Yes, it is also important that you know the basic maintenance and repair of existing structures. Then studies and advises on technological aspects of particular materials. So this will apply for civil engineers who are always curious on something and who always want to develop something, or those who aspires to invent something. So one simple example for that is if you are a civil engineer and you wanted to focus or you wanted to do further studies in material engineering, then you can do further technological studies with regards to that aspect. So you can come up to a new kind of material that is applicable in the civil engineering industry. Then maintains technical liaison and consultancy with other relevant specialists. So you could be a supervisor of not only for the employees in the civil engineering industry, but also if a certain project involves other professionals and other skilled workers, just like architects, interior designers, who could, or even mechanical and electrical engineers, considering that you are the supervisor who is a civil engineer, uh, you have to know how to do your job as a liaison or as a consultant to that certain project, because you are the trusted one to um, like to manage all these other professions and other skilled employees. Then inspects project sites to monitor progress and ensures conformance to design, specifications, and safety or sanitation standards. Either if you are the one doing the design of the structure, or you are only hired to be the inspector of a certain construction, you really have to uphold your role as the inspector, because at some point there are some inspectors who will just go for the red tape and will just let the current things that is being done during the construction pass, even if he or she is seeing some substandard portions of the work. Uh, Sample for this, if there is a road construction, especially for government projects. So inspectors for road construction should supposedly be strict with regards to the certain sizes of the reinforcing bars being used on that road, on the certain ratio of the cement, sand, and other components of the road structures. However, it is obvious that some roads are not really passing through the standard expectation or recommendation. So at this point, the fault can be blamed on not only for the contractor constructing the project, but also to the inspector doing the inspection of the entire project. Then, for the physical attributes and characteristics, a civil engineer is expected that he or she can handle extreme pressure. Especially for the fresh graduates or those who are working newly, um, it's really hard to adjust certain pressure at work, because it could be the cause for you to stop working from that company. But at some point, you should also consider that some pressure are intended to be given to you, maybe because the employer sees a potential in your skills and abilities, and maybe he's just trying to test if you can really handle it, and if you can, then you can expect for a higher position. However, you should also be careful that sometimes extreme pressure could be just a reason for an employer or a coworker that is being done to you for you to really quit from your job. So it's up to you to observe if it is really for a um, better, it can really do good for your employment in a certain company. But if when you observe that it can no longer do good, and it is not doing or it is really affecting to your personal like personally, then it's time for you to decide to quit. Then civil engineer should be willing to work extended hours if needed. Of course, this applies for tasks that wherein you cannot really leave it, because if you will leave it, then there would be consequence that will happen. Sample for this is if you are assigned to supervise a project that involves doing flooring of a certain structure. So, and then, for example, if the labor are already doing the flooring of the second floor, and the clock strikes at around 4:45 in the afternoon, but then all of you knew that you have to stop working at 5 o'clock. However, you as a civil engineer assigned on that project also knew that the flooring should be continuously should be done, um, like you don't have to leave it undone. Then it is the time wherein you really have to do extended hours and even to your laborers, so that the flooring of the second floor can be finished at a certain portion wherein it will not affect the stability, durability of the concrete mix and the um, load computations of that certain structural member. And then things like this, it is your role as a civil engineer to ensure when to stop a certain tasks, even if it is time to supposedly be off from work. But if you are thinking not only for your time spent on work, but also for the entire project that you are handling, then you really have to be responsible with it. Next is creative and imaginative. So as a civil engineer, they usually um, they usually rated us as we are only designing structures like a box. Compared to architects, they are designing structures in a very nice aesthetic. However, for me, this is not true if only you are a civil engineer who is creative and imaginative. It is because in the first place, I'm not saying that we are higher than architects, but I am just saying that structures cannot stand without a civil engineer. Structures cannot stand with architects alone, because structural computation with respect to the design, loads, designs, and whatever computations relate that can enhance, or that is really the basic needed thing for a structure to be sturdy, rigid, and strong. All of that computations are coming from an engineer. But the outer part of the structure are mostly done by an architect, because of course this is part of their um, training during college, to do like the artistic side of the structure. But if you are a creative and imaginative civil engineer, you can also have your own creative designs, which you can even incorporate to an architect hired by the owner of the structure. And even sometimes civil engineers are like designing aesthetically, um, like comparable with architects. So especially right now that there are already available software design, not only for structural analysis, but also for interior and exterior aesthetics, then um, we as civil engineers can grab it and like enhance our creativity and imagination. Then ability to see details at close range. So basic thing or basic example for this is for the cost and estimates. You really have to see you really have to be a keen observer, or like ability to see details with regards to the estimate of a certain project that you're assigned with, because one simple mistake could literally affect to the entire cost of the project. Another thing is see details of the design computation, like if the structural members being used are economical or not economical, because on a certain in the structural design analysis, you you always, the civil engineer always have the option to like be economical or present the structural members to the client in either considering the cost or not considering the cost. Like if a civil engineer is having a foreigner client, some of them will grab the opportunity to make the cost of the entire project bigger so that they can have a larger percentage with regards to their professional fees and services. However, if they are dealing with a relative, then the civil engineer should be always tried to be economical with regards to the budget of the entire project. So things like this, you should have a balance wherein you should not see how you present your project as to who your client is, but on how you perform as a civil engineer. You should always consider strong structural design and at the same time economical structural members. Next is capable of organizing, coordinating, and supervising workers. So uh, with relate in terms to like labor or workers, you really have to organize, coordinate, and supervise it well, because if not, you will manage everything and you will end up spending more on the labor cost rather than on the material cost of a certain project. So, like years before, usually the percentage of the labor in a certain project was only 35% of the like entire project. So 35% labor, 65% material cost. However, these days labor cost tends to increase. It is because it depends also on the required work of a certain client. If the client is so meticulous that he or she wants to do this and that, so this is what you need to be careful with, that you really have a Gantt chart wherein you can see how many days should this task be done by a certain number of workers, so that you can foresee and have a real budget of the labor cost. So that is all for now with our discussion about civil engineer rate, salary, and employment expectations. And everything that I am talking right now is coming from the Bureau of Local Employment and the Department of Labor and Employment Philippines. That is all. Thank you, and check on our next discussion.